now.
Good morning. Let's get started. Welcome to the COVID-19 Manufacturing Recovery and Preparedness webinar series. This 45-minute program is being conducted live on Thursday, May 7th, 2020. I am Maddie Merton, Vice President of Business Retention and Expansion of the Economic Development Board for Tacoma-Pierce County. I want to thank our manufacturing community who have generously offered to support our frontline workers in producing much needed PPE and have kept producing essential products. Because of your quick response and contributions, Tacoma-Pierce County will emerge out of this crisis stronger. We believe that having a plan to prepare your facilities to restart and developing your capabilities to operate is essential to getting your employees back to work and meeting the needs of your customers. The Economic Development Board and Impact Washington have hosted 3 separate online meetings for manufacturers starting last week, every Tuesday and Thursday. Today is our last webinar for Pierce County. Experts from Impact Washington will share guidance on recovery and preparation best practices. During this presentation, you will learn about prevention measures and commonly overlooked areas of your facility that you'll want to address. Additionally, one of the main reasons we wanted to host Impact Washington is that this presentation will also cover how you can obtain a grant that will pay 100% of the cost to have a consultant help you through the process of improving and rolling out your safety measures. You should not have to invent these plans on your own. This is a valuable resource. On an interesting side note, the research group Blank Rome published survey results yesterday showing that approximately 75% of companies didn't have a comprehensive documented plan covering key areas. 12% of the companies surveyed had received formal complaints from staff. Again, you don't have to do this on your own. Also, hosting today's call, I am pleased to have online my 2 partners in this effort, Jeff Lawrence and Joseph Gosar, account executives from Impact Washington. My compliments to Jeff and his entire team for handling all of the logistics around these meetings. I want to thank the sponsors of these recurring calls, City of Lakewood, City of Puyallup, City of Sumner, City of Tacoma, and Pierce County. Questions can be submitted at any time. For those on the webinar, you can write a question and submit it using a space provided, or for those calling in, you can email Gosar, Gosar at impactwashington.org. Once the panels conclude, we'll get right to the question and get through as many as possible. Also, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the EDB and Impact Washington site. I would highly encourage you to share this information with your partners and suppliers to encourage them to be ready. Now, I would like to turn the mic over to Jeff Lawrence.
Okay, thanks very much, Maddie. Before I tell you about Impact Washington and the reasons we're doing this, all the webinars have had basically the same content. So again, just to reinforce what Maddie said, please spread the word to your partners, suppliers, clients, etc., if you feel it might be useful to them. So Impact Washington is a 501c3 nonprofit offering services and support to manufacturers in the state of Washington with the intent to enhance growth, reduce costs, provide workforce training and empowerment, and generally to expand manufacturing competency and capacity in the state. Impact Washington is the state center for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership MEP network, a nationwide public-private partnership that supports small and medium-sized manufacturers in every state and Puerto Rico. We're known for workforce training in lean, leadership, and consulting in many manufacturing related areas. And we've been around for over 20 years and have helped the Washington manufacturing community realize increased sales and revenues, have supported new investments, have contributed to creating and retaining jobs, and the work we've done has resulted in cost savings. And this information is based upon third-party surveys that follow each of the engagements that we have with our clients as a condition of the support that we get from the NIST national network to be able to show and to demonstrate the ongoing value of the services provided. We come from the manufacturing world as owners, executives, operations managers, and engineers. We've been directly engaged with production operations, so we have dealt with many of the challenges our clients face and have direct experience with the impacts of the services that we deliver. We and our large network of resource partners are offering support now to manufacturers in this time of uncertainty related to the COVID-19 crisis, providing no-cost guidance on recovery preparedness for continuing or returning to operations. So the EDB and our other partners in Pierce County are reaching out to the Pierce County manufacturing community and others across the state and across the region to offer assistance to enable you to continue or return to work safely and with confidence. An overview of the presentation is we'll discuss high-level steps for site and facility compliance, and these are basically the steps that we'll be going through on the no-cost assessments, but we'll give an overview of it here in the presentation. Talk about some examples of best practices and housekeeping recommendation. Discuss an employee or an employer risk assessment to classify worker exposure and implement workplace controls in order to mitigate and to minimize risk. And then discuss working with our clients, with the manufacturing community, to assist in putting together an exposure risk decision matrix. So again, spread the word with your colleagues, suppliers, customers, and other manufacturers who you think might be benefited by this assessment and by these services. The NIST MEP National Network has received some grant monies within the $2 trillion CARES Act for funding for pandemic response in the manufacturing community. And this is how we are funding these assessments. And this is just the first part of a recovery effort that we and our sister organizations around the country are engaging in to help get the manufacturing community in this state and across the nation back to work safely and efficiently. We're assisting manufacturers at this time of uncertainty to continue or resume operations. And obviously very important to protect the work force, but also we're sensitive to the needs and the challenges of the managers and owners in this unprecedented time when there's not a lot of written script for how to react to this. So we provide counsel and advice using systematic procedures based on best available information. So the high-level steps for site compliance that we'll be doing in this assessment are: step 1, to review existing procedures and comment on facility best practices and housekeeping recommendations. Conduct an employer risk assessment based upon the positions in your organization, in your operation or area exposure, and then implement. Work directly with the employers to assist in implementation of those workplace controls based upon the risk of exposure. So the review element of the high-level steps, this is where we'll start a large part of the focus. We'll work with our client companies to assist in developing facility-wide communication plan, employee support, and training, starting with an obvious recommendation that plant leadership should observe and model measures put in place while reinforcing the importance of observing them to employees entering the plant and others for that matter. Possibly consider adding extra capacity to employee assistance programs, helplines, and remind employees about this resource if it's available and their services. Also encourage employees to recognize areas or report areas or practices that pose a risk in the workplace, and then work to define processes to quickly review and provide mitigation strategies in these areas that are identified. Health screening best practices is recommendations. Obviously, establishing guidelines within an operation and training employees and visitors on new COVID-19 related procedures. Limiting non-essential visitors from entering this facility, including perhaps other employees who are not normally stationed at the location and maybe located at a different location. Creating social distancing, which can be done with either procedure or with engineering controls, as we'll discuss in a moment. When possible, don't have in-person meetings, and if in-person meetings are required, meet in large rooms and be at least 6 feet distant from others, keeping meetings as short as possible. Just a couple of examples of good health habits. It's a good idea to record all visitors in a log so that they can be recorded and contacted if they're in the unfortunate event that an outbreak should occur. Placing posters and reminders around the building that support staying home when sick. Best practices for coughing and sneezing, keeping hands clean, which is a big one, and posting these in places where they'll be visible for not only employees but for visitors. And also making sure you have tissues and trash cans throughout the building for use by anyone who needs them. Other best practices tailored to individual sites could be related to entrance, hallways, or common spaces. Consider auto opening doors or encouraging bumping doors open with a hip or using your foot on a kick plate. There may be possibility to remove door closures when possible and keep doors open to allow employees to move freely within doorways without touching knobs when it doesn't impact safety or other separation requirements. Entrance and hallways for production floor. As much as possible, employees should enter workplace areas with clean hands, and so it's recommended to provide hand washing stations strategically around the facility. Regarding employee clock in and clock out practices, consider 6-foot blocking spacing if a time clock is in use, much as we're getting used to in grocery stores and other areas where people congregate. Many time clocks have web-based features that can be operated through phone apps, or consider using other inexpensive apps that employees could use to track time and then submit them at a later time to supervisors. And probably goes without saying, but provide additional hand sanitizer or hand washing stations near the time clock. In terms of common tools, human machine interfaces such as keyboards, buttons, etc., should be sanitized frequently and between users. Standard items and tools like brooms, rakes, scrapers, or hand tools should be sanitized after each use, and particularly between 2 separate users. Other common use items such as pens, Sharpies, etc. Recommendations are to either issue those individually or to sanitize them frequently and again between users. In terms of risk during shift change, explore options to stagger days, shifts, shift changes, breaks, and lunches to avoid grouping. Identify individuals who do not need to come into the production restrooms and who do not need to use the same resources as a larger number of employees. If possible, separate team members into smaller groups and isolate them to use perhaps separate bathrooms and break areas when possible. Order external Santa cans with sinks and perhaps outside tables for additional break areas. And as the weather gets a little better, that'll become more possible. With some employees working remotely, determine if any office spaces that perhaps they're not using at that time can be repurposed for segregated lunch or changing areas. Break rooms, lunch rooms, expand and stagger breaks and meal times for groups of employees to reduce the number of employees in break areas or cafeterias at any one time. And consider using other conference rooms or other separation areas. There have been a couple of manufacturers who have rented tents, for example, to distance employees. Intensify sanitation of common touch areas, such as refrigerator handles, sinks, microwaves, and faucets or kitchenette areas. In office or clerical work areas, separate and segregate office staff, ideally limiting offices to one person per office space if required on site, and allow and follow 6 foot distancing practices. And when possible, create walk-up windows or clear plastic barriers for employees looking for HR or other management or administrative assistance. Other considerations that we'll go through and work on individually with client companies is to discuss limiting non-essential visitors from entering the facility, including other employees that are usually stationed at other locations. And it really very important in this particular time is to look at your cybersecurity. As many people are working remotely, to make sure that we're keeping that client companies are looking at their cybersecurity practices for all electronic interfaces outside of facilities which have a firewall protection. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of clients have decided to order Santa cans for perhaps external truck drivers, shipping and receiving teams, maintenance teams, etc. To help employers determine appropriate precautions, OSHA has divided job tasks into 4 exposure levels: very high, high, medium, and lower. In the manufacturing operations, most of the workers will likely fall in medium or lower exposure risk categories. High and very high will be likely related to healthcare and first responder professions. OSHA looks at basically 3 code requirements for workplace safety. The general duty clause, which is basically that an employer has a duty to create workplace free from risk and hazards to the degree possible. Bloodborne pathogens, this is written largely toward healthcare and first responder professions. And it basically states that, that there's a duty to prevent transfer of pathogens via bodily fluids. And PPE is the last one, which is a requirement to provide appropriate PPE for risks inherent to the workplace or encountered in the workplace. So the conduct portion of the high-level compliance in the workplace evaluation would be broken down into several areas. Engineering controls, we talked about that a little earlier. That includes looking at ventilation, barriers, physical layout. And in terms of ventilation, we encourage operations to evaluate ventilation and filters. There is the possibility to integrate UV filters into air circulation, which can effectively remove airborne pathogens, or maybe incorporate filters with a higher MERV rating and consider increasing ventilation rates. Evaluate separation services to prevent cross-contamination of breathing air, and consider implementing barriers to ensure 6-foot maximum separation. So in terms of administrative controls, processes, procedures, and best practices, these are what we were talking about earlier and what will be gone into in greater detail with each specific location, because every manufacturing facility is different. And of course, PPE, evaluating and making sure that appropriate PPE for the risk level and for the working environment is provided, and that there is the enforcement of its use for the protection of everybody. So here's an example of a risk assessment with workplace controls based upon on position or area exposure that we would help our manufacturing clients to work through. Basically, what we will do with the companies is go through the exposure, the risk exposure of every position in the organization. And here we have an example of a shear press operator with outlined job duties, exposure risk. This particular job position was deemed a low risk. Engineering, are there any engineering controls that need to be done? In this case, no. Administration, training in social distancing, good health habits, spacing in lunchrooms, etc. The kind of things we talked about and will be identified for each specific application. PPE, with this particular position, there's no required, no mandatory PPE. However, if employees would feel more comfortable wearing a face mask or whatever, make allowance for that PPE to be provided. As we go down in other positions, there may be very different risk exposures with accordingly different workplace controls based upon that risk exposure. So the next step is to implement these things we've been talking about, and that would be working with individual companies to work through the process. Each operation requires policies to be tailored to the specific facility, the specific risks relevant to the employees or those they may encounter during work. So before I pass it over to my colleague, Joseph Gosar, just a couple other things for discussion. At the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, Impact Washington was involved with the Department of Commerce, the Governor's Office, and others, serving as a matchmaker to identify critical needs and to mobilize manufacturers to produce those goods. If you could go to the next slide, please. Now, FEMA has established a PPE exchange, which is organized in a simple to use dashboard to connect private sector sellers with private sector buyers. Here's a link here for those of you who are joining by phone. This is being recorded as Maddie mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and you can actually click on the, after you get back to a computer, you can click on the link that got you here, or that was outlined to join this webinar, and that will take you back to the recording after this particular webinar is completed, and you can get the contact information and the web information there. Also, if the PPE doesn't meet FDA standards, or if you don't get traction on the FEMA site, you can offer your materials on Amazon Business and on Amazon.com, and there's a link which is outlined here also that you can access if that would be of interest to you. And again, you can access that by clicking on the link that brought you here. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Joseph Gosar, who will explain a little bit more about the assessment and the review process, and answer questions that participants in this webinar might have.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me already, my name is Joseph Gosar, and I've been brought on to the Impact Washington team recently to help Jeff Lawrence here in the Tacoma South Sound area. I look forward to continue to work and expand the pioneered efforts that Jeff has made here, and I want to thank all of you for the help that you've given us and the projects that you've done with us in the past, and extend to you the Impact Washington is really hoping to help us bounce back from this the best we can, and that this is just the first of several initiatives that we are putting together to assist you with your business. I want to take a little bit of time to define what a manufacturer is. Some of you on this call may not consider yourself a manufacturer, but in Impact Washington's eyes, anyone that does a value-added operation to a product here in Washington State counts. So distilleries, packaging, food producers, assembly operations, those all are considered manufacturing under the rules that we're working with, especially for this grant. There are 2 steps that you need to take to get your free assessment and access to the consultants. The first step is that you need to contact Impact Washington. If you're in Pierce County, you can email me at jgosar@impactwashington.org. That's J as in Jack, G as in good, O as in Oscar, S as in Sam, A as in Arnold, R as in Roger, @impactwashington.org. If you are in another part of the state, please email info@impactwashington.org. Or if you can see the representative here on the map, their email address for your area, you feel free to reach out to them directly. If you're in another state, you can email info@impactwashington.org and feel free to put in the title of that email the state that your facility is in, and we will forward your contact information to the appropriate MEP center for your state so that they can help you in a similar fashion. Once you've reached out to us, the second step is that Impact Washington will contact you and set up a time to talk. You speak with someone like me, and we will ask you questions about your facility, the products that you make, some of the struggles that you're having. And the reason for this initial conversation is so that we can look through our catalog of consultants that we work with and find someone that's going to match your business and be able to understand what you're going through the best, right? I would match someone that has a lot of food production experience with a food production plant, for example. Shortly after that intake call, we would arrange a time for the consultant to assist your company. I promise you that the time that you spend with these consultants will be productive and very informative. They're very good at what they do. The assessments typically take about a day to complete. It typically consists of about a 2-hour meeting in the morning and then an hour and a half meeting in the late afternoon with the time in between for the consultant to write up the report. The takeaways from the consultant will be a report documenting your risk levels, the current efforts that you're taking to mitigate these risks, and the planned or proposed improvements based on your discussions with the consultant. I encourage you to leverage this resource, as other manufacturers have found it extremely helpful and reassuring. Just this morning, we were talking about a large manufacturer that really had things dialed in. They've been running for a while and they've been doing a really, really good job. But going through, and they're a larger company, and they have multiple safety people for multiple facilities. And on the call with our consultant, they were able to find some areas that they missed, and they were extremely grateful. And so I encourage manufacturers, both large and small startups, to take advantage of this grant so that you can get some help. You shouldn't have to do it by yourself. And another takeaway that you get from reaching out to us and taking advantage of this grant and consulting is that you're on our radar. We know you, we've worked with you in the past, and we have an idea of what your business is going through and the struggles that it has. So as additional resources and additional projects come online, you'll be kind of first in line, right, to receive some of those and to have us reach out to you as we find resources and opportunities that match you and your facility's needs. And with that, Maddie, could you open us up for some questions? And feel free, if you're online, to move your mouse, and then you should be able to click Q&A button that'll allow you to write in your questions.
All right. Thanks, Joseph. So let me look at the first question. Okay. So question, where can we find clear guidance on temperature taking employee screening, specifically training and how or who should handle confidential information? 3-part question, and then how long does employer need to maintain records?
So that's actually a very good question, and it's an area that we've been working really hard to help define some of the best practices. Just yesterday, we were speaking with a client, and one of the big takeaways that they got was to actually create a mobile cart with the guarding on it, and some additional changes to allow them to move the cart between different facilities or different parts of their facilities, or the single facility, to be able to take temperatures in different areas as needed, as different parts of their staff come in into different additional areas. And we helped them come up with a procedure on who would take the temperatures, what they would do in the process of taking the temperatures, how they would record the temperatures, and then how they would clean the cart and other things as someone would come and replace them. So that was very helpful. In terms of the employers gathering that data and how long they need to hold on to it, and those HR sensitive questions, if that is a concern, I would urge you to let us know during that initial conversation, and we will get you in touch with one of our HR and OSHA consultants that has experience not just in manufacturing, but in serving a lot of different industries, including hospitals and stuff like that. And they would be able to help you determine the best methods and the best systems to do that, and what the legal situation and would be for your facility and your application. So.
Great, thanks, Joseph. And just wanted to remind you, if you are dialing in, to go ahead and email Gosar at impactwashington.org for questions, or on the chat box side, there is a Q&A box that you can type a question in. So next question. Are you able to conduct an assessment if a facility is currently operating?
Yes. So how we review the facilities, and we've worked with facilities that are shut down and haven't come back online yet. We've worked with essential businesses that have been on some form of production, typically vastly diminished production and staff. And how we do the visits is virtually. Typically, one of the staff members will set up a cell phone, and we'll do a Skype-like or FaceTime-like tour of the facility, and that so that we're not introducing someone to your facility that could add any risk to you. And in situations where the facility is where there's security concerns, intellectual property concerns or something like that, like tier 1 Boeing suppliers doing some military work. In situations like that, what we would do is we would have you take some pictures of things like break rooms and common areas that are not necessarily secured, and also give us some kind of floor layout or the best that we can, so that the idea is that we want the consultants to have as much information and the best image in their head that they can get of what they're dealing with, right? The break room, how many microwaves, where's the sink, where's the door, how many tables. That helps them ask better questions. And it's, the assessment isn't, so I think some people, when they hear assessment, they think of, check boxes, right? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing that? And it's not really that way. It's really more of the document that we use opens up discussions, and the better information, the more we can see, the better discussions. So.
Okay, next question, cloth mask. Any tips for employees any tips for employees to launder easily between daily use?
That actually is one of the areas that we cover, and it's going to change quite a bit based on the facility and the processes, but laundry in general, changing rooms in general, are an area that get overlooked a lot. We had one client that we were working with that had their employees from some of their facilities. They had a central laundry unit within the facility already, and they would launder uniforms there. Another facility, it wasn't as necessary, and so they haven't. So traditionally, they would have their employees take their garments home and wash them at home and bring them back to work. The facility, that particular stage of the process, didn't need the same level of cleanliness as the other facility. However, after talking to them, they decided to change things up and to not allow the employees to bring their clothes home to wash, because it added an extra layer of risk of the employees bringing in clothes that may have been sneezed on or exposed to other people, and so that's one area they just decided, you know what, we're just going to do the laundry for the whole facility and not worry about things going back and forth. In terms of cloth masks, it would depend on how close quartered your people were, and the risk levels. In this situation, the risk level is relatively high because they can only space their employees so far apart. And so that's why they kind of went to the extreme of, we will do all of the laundry. You come in with your clothes, you get new clothes, you go out with your clothes, so that you're not bringing anything into the facility from the outside as much as possible. So that question would, in regards to masks, would probably fall under a "it depends" answer, and that's kind of one extreme. The other one would be, the exposure, that the likelihood of them interacting, of the employees interacting at all, if that's really low, that's not a high risk activity, bringing your own mask or laundering your own mask.
Great. Another question about PPE again. So if we require all visitors, vendors and suppliers who enter the facility to wear a mask, should we expect them to provide their own mask?
What we have seen so far, there's been a couple cases where that question has come up, and it's an important part because some of these companies have quite a few vendors or delivery people that kind of have to interact with their staff. And in those cases, it is advised that you have them bring their own, but understand that it is sometimes difficult to find them, and that there is a behavioral change that's going to need to take place for that to be expected. And so it would be a little bit of both, in that you would want to start requiring it, but obviously you have to plan on some people forgetting or not being able to find them, and being able to have several on hand in case you need them, and to work with your vendors and suppliers ahead of time so that they know the expectation, if that's an expectation that you would like to add. And I would also say that is becoming more and more common to add that into your safety plan because it is an outside risk.
Great. And next question, this might go to both Jeff and also to Joseph. So are there any efforts underway from the manufacturing community to move forward reopening all manufacturing sooner or to help Washington State and the governor's office reopen manufacturing sooner than the phased approach that the governor laid out last Friday?
Yeah, this is Jeff. It's really on a case-by-case basis, Maddie. The essential businesses have remained open. And as the governor's information comes out, obviously we're getting questions all the time from manufacturers about trying to interpret really what he's saying because there is a little bit of a gray area in there. So I think that what we do is that we one of the reasons that this service of assessment and going through risk has been so important is that having a plan to mitigate risk has been a condition of reopening. For example, it was last week or the week before, whenever it was, when it was outlined by the governor that that construction sites could reopen. That was conditioned on the fact that the construction operations had a plan. And so having a plan and having it well thought out is a very good way to ensure that you're going to feel confident to be able to open up and protect your employees as much as you can, and most rapidly that you possibly can.
And the idea behind this and the reason that this exists, I would add too, is that it's not just that you have a plan. A lot of companies already have a plan, and a lot of times they're really good. We're helping them tweak them to make them better. But the reason that you want to leverage this, aside from just having a better plan, is you get to have a document in hand saying that a third party looked over your plan and helped you document it and date it and figure out, how you're going to roll these things out. And having it documented is going to help you, in the future, and just show your employees and anyone else that needs to know, that wants to know, that you've taken this seriously and that you've done what you can, and what you've done. So documentation is incredibly important, and that's part of why this report exists.
Great, thanks Joseph, thanks Jeff. So we have time for just one final question before we wrap up the call. So let me take a quick peek. Hold on. Back. Okay. Let's see. So and this is actually coming from me. So with the recent CARES Act that was passed, do you anticipate any further resources and opportunities for manufacturers? Most of the programs that have been coming out have been, targeted towards very small businesses, highly subscribed, and quickly running out of funding. Do you anticipate more opportunities to support the manufacturing community with the next tranche of funding?
I can take a shot at that one, Nettie, and the answer is yes. We are working on further recovery kind of deliverables that will be rolled out. I think that you mentioned at the beginning of the call that the recent survey showed that over 3/4 of employers don't have don't have a plan, don't have a disaster plan and a disaster recovery plan. And going forward, this is going to be a must-have in the records of every company, and we want to be able to help them to be able to prepare those. As we move forward in this new world of social distancing and of operating in a different paradigm, making sure that manufacturers are able to do that efficiently and effectively is also going to be a big focus. I mean, we do a lot of work. Impact Washington does a lot of work with increasing effectiveness and efficiency and training, workforce training of employees. And so with this new normal, which hasn't been defined yet, we hope to be heavily engaged, and we will continue to be engaged with our clients to help them be able to do that. Also, it's likely that there will be a lot more or a lot higher percentage of the workforce in any given company who does more remote work. It's going to be important that the effectiveness of doing that and also the security of doing that is observed, and there are best practices that are established for that as well. So there's a number of things that we're working on. We're pretty much focused on this immediate recovery right now, and on doing these assessments and helping our client manufacturing companies and their employees feel safe and confident that they can return to work. And then we're going to roll out other parts of this as the recovery continues.
I would also like to add real quick, something that we didn't mention is that the assessment is for you. Even though this is paid for by grant money, there is no sharing with any other parties. Part of this is the thing that you sign off, the document that you sign with us is a contract stating that this is the report is only for you. There is no strings attached in terms of reporting to anyone else. So wanted to make sure that was clear. Some people feel like because it's a grant, it would be tied to trying to gather data on a larger scale, and that's not what this is.
Great, thanks, Joseph. Okay, so I know we're running out of time. Any final comments, Jeff and Joseph, before we wrap up our final webinar in this series? I'll just kind of say on my side, the EDB, the Economic Development Board is very grateful for this strategic partnership to bring resources to bear for our manufacturing community. Having the expertise on hand to deliver this type of work is critical. And so those of you on the call today, I hope you will encourage your team and your leadership team to take the step forward. And we want to be there to facilitate and also get you back up and running operationally and also profitable as soon as possible. So let us know what we can do to help. My contact information is going to be listed on the webinar slides, which will be on our website. Feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email if you need questions or just want to chat. We'll be available for that.
Thanks for hosting and for partnering, Maddie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, and then also one final shout out. We have some silent heroes that have been organizing these webinars. So I just wanted to, give a quick shout out for us to bring this opportunity to Pierce County businesses. It takes an entire team. So behind the scenes, we have Kara Bladen, who is the communications manager for Impact Washington, who has done a fabulous job of creating all of the documents that you see here, the webinar presentation, also the flyer, and also Damon Devani, who is the IT systems. Having the team behind to support the work is very important, so I wanted to give them a shout out. You don't see them, but they've been on all of our calls. So thank you both for your partnership and also for piloting this important project for our community. We are very appreciative of that. So I know I ran a little bit over. Impact Washington, you are, as always, a strategic partner. Our county, Pierce County, and the Economic Development Board, and also our cities and jurisdictions appreciate the partnership and are very looking forward to what we can do to accomplish recovery together. We are foreseeing that we will be in a good position once we get through this challenging part, but we'll be, walking towards a clearer and less uncertain future together. So appreciate the partnership. And so thank you everyone for joining the call today, and looking forward to hearing from all of you. So this concludes our webinar, and hope you all are going to enjoy Mother's Day and have plans to be around family. Thanks again.